Alright, on this video we're going to add and subtract fractions. So if you take a look at these first two, they already have the same denominator, and so when we have the same denominator we simply combine the numerators. In this case we're adding. So we take 17 plus 10, which is going to be 27. And then the denominator stays the same. Now 27 and 21 are both divisible by 3. So if we simplified this, right, that's 3 times 9 and 3 times 7, which leaves us with, those were kind of thick lines. Let me get a different one that's not so thick. That leaves us with 9 sevenths. Now 9 sevenths is an improper fraction. It is not necessary to write this as a mixed number. Many students kind of feel like they're supposed to always do that, but you don't need to. For me, in algebra, we prefer improper fractions. There's nothing improper about them. That's just saying our numerator is a larger number than the denominator. So stop right there and leave it as it is. On this next one, we're taking 7 and subtracting 1. Now you don't want to lose your subtraction sign, so you could write this as plus a negative 1 so that that stands out better, because remember, adding the opposite is the same as subtraction. So then we take 7 and we subtract 1, which is 6/4. Once again, we're going to have an improper fraction. Both of these are divisible by 2, so you could just say, okay, I'm dividing this by 2. I'm dividing this by 2, so my answer is 3/2. Once again, we have an improper fraction, which is perfectly fine. Okay, next. Okay, so now you see that we do not have the same denominator, and we have to come up with a process to find the least common denominator. Now there are different ways to go about this, but I'm going to show you one that I feel like is probably the easiest one and usually doesn't take you too long to figure out. So what you can do is take the larger denominator, which is 16, and write it as multiples. So 16 times 1, 16 times 2, 16 times 3, 16 times 4, and so on. But then really as you go, you're checking to see, will 12 divide into this? Now you can always check first, does 12 divide into 16, because 16 was your larger denominator, and it doesn't. 12 won't go into 32. I mean, it does, but it makes a decimal. 12 does go into 48, and that goes in 4 times. 16 times 3 is 48. 16 times 4 is 48. So now we've found our common denominator. We're going to rewrite both fractions with a denominator of 48. Now, I just told you what it was going to take to get the 48, right? We're going to multiply 12 times 4 and 11 times 4, right? 4 over 4 is 1. So we're really multiplying by 1, which means we get an equivalent fraction. An equivalent fraction simplifies back to the same fraction we started with, right? So we know that they actually mean the same thing, but we have to have that same denominator in order to add. So 4 times 11 is 44. There's my numerator. The numerator has to change. It can't stay as 11 to write the equivalent fraction. And then we know that we multiply 16 by 3 to rewrite this one with a denominator of 48. So my numerator in this case will be a 3. All right. And then I simply subtract. I take 44 minus 3 and write that over my denominator. I check to see, can I simplify, but 41 doesn't have any factors that will simplify with 48. And so this is simplified as much as possible. All right, here's the next one. Okay, so we're going to go through the same process, right? I'm going to take my larger denominator and write multiples, right? So 25 times 1, 25 times 2, 25 times 3. As I go, I'm going to check, right? Does 15 go into 25? No. 50, no, not, and gives me a whole number, right? But 15 goes into 75, right? 5 times. And you can just use your calculator to check that. Okay, so now I'm going to rewrite my fractions with a common denominator of 75. And then I'm writing equivalent fractions again. I'm going to multiply by whatever it takes to get that denominator. Well, it's 15 times 5, so I multiply my numerator by the same number, 5. 5 over 5 equals 1. So once again, I'm multiplying by 1. 1 can take on whatever form it needs to be. In this case, it needs to be a 5, so that I get 5 times 15 equals 75. So my numerator will be 35. And then on my denominator, I need to multiply it by 3 to get 75. And my numerator will be a 21. Okay. So then I subtract 35 minus 21. Also remember, you can do this little thing, add the opposite so you don't lose that minus sign. 35 minus 21 is 14. And then my denominator is 75. Now you can always double check, right? Can I simplify this any? Well, 14 is 2 times 7. And 75 is 3 times 25. 25 is 5 times 5. You see that you don't have any common factors, so that means that this is simplified completely, and we stop right here. All right, here's our last one. Now on this one, we can kind of take a little bit of a shortcut with the 4 and the 2. We know that 2 goes into 4. So basically, we can find a common denominator based on the 11 and the 4 because we know that 2 is going to work, right? It's going to be an even number. 2 goes into whatever that's going to be. So if I list the multiples of 11, right? 11, 22, 11 times 2 is 22, 11 times 3 is 33, 11 times 4 is 44. You see this time it is 4 times 11 because neither of 11 and 4 don't have any common factors, and that's why it ends up this way. So my common denominator is going to be, my LCD, right, least common denominator will be 44. So I'm going to write all three fractions with a denominator of 44. And that means I multiply by whatever it takes to get 44 in the denominator. So for the 11, that's going to be a 4, which means I multiply my numerator by 4. So 4 times 8 is 32. I know I'm multiplying the 4 by 11. Got to squeeze that in there. So 1 times 11 is 11. And then I'm multiplying the 2. 2 goes into 44 22 times. So I'm multiplying by 22. And then I can do this plus a negative 11. So basically then I can just combine these left to right. I can add my positive numbers first. If you're using a calculator, you can just key in 32 minus 11 plus 22. And that's going to be fine. So 32 minus 11 is going to give me 21. 21 plus 22. Well, let me just write that. Okay, so we have, I'm going to do the positive ones. 32 and 22 would be 54. And then that's plus the negative 11. 54 minus 11 is 43. And then 43 over 44 is not going to simplify. I think you can tell that by looking. 43 is a prime number, I'm pretty sure. And that's the end of this lesson. Alrighty, thank you.